What's up guys, it's Aiden, and today we're going to go through how Drake's first-person shooter was made. Let's get into the video. First-person shooter is one of the biggest songs off of Drake's latest album, For All the Dogs, and today we'll be analysing every aspect of this song to make our remake so accurate that not even Shazam can tell the difference between our remake and the original song. So at the end of this video, I'll be playing the final result over my speakers into Shazam to see if it picks up the original song. And that's going to be a challenge because this song has an absolutely stacked production team. Coleman, Vinylz, Tay Keith, Boy Wonder, FNZ and OZ. And the moment I saw this legendary group of producers, I knew we were in for an absolutely fascinating remake today. As always, you can access the project FLP and stems for this remake, as well as all my other remakes on our Patreon page or on our website, trapmasters.io. And lastly, and this is really important if you want to make beats in this Travis Scott Drake type of genre, we just released our latest drum kit, Utopia, last night, which is the first kit we've posted in over a year because we've spent so much time and effort working on this kit. And because the pack is so large and so good, we've dropped a free teaser pack on our Patreon as well, so you can join as a free member and access the pack for free, and you can decide for yourself if you would like to get the full pack. So if you're one of the real ones who was patient enough not to skip through this intro, here's a discount code for our latest drum kit. Anyway, let's jump into the deconstruction. First person shooter starts off at the tempo of 122 BPM, and we're sampling the song Look Me in the Eyes by Joe Washington, which comes in at 1:05. In remaking this song, I had the really good fortune of speaking directly with one of the original producers of the song, Zach from FNZ, an Australian producer duo. They've also produced other Drake songs like Rich Flex, so huge shout out to them. What's super impressive here is that these guys actually found both samples that would ultimately land on both beats of this song. So that's super rare to see. The two different beats in a song, they found both samples. And so Zach told me that this first beat was produced in collaboration with Vinylz, and it was produced months and months before the album came out. And Vinylz was working directly with Drake at the time, who was requesting some hard chopped soul samples, and so they landed on this one. That song actually plays in 3/4 time, also known as waltz time, which is like 3 beats in every bar. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we actually have seen both Drake and J. Cole make songs using this time signature. So J. Cole, his song Vile Mentality from his For Your Eyes Only album, that was in 3/4. And believe it or not, Drake's latest album For All the Dogs actually features 2 songs that were in a 3/4 time signature. So that was Slime You Out, a song that we've remade already, as well as Amen. So while rappers like Drake and J. Cole do use beats that play in 3/4 time, that time signature gives a significant focus onto lyricism over the instrumental. And that can be good, obviously, if you're focusing on the lyrics. But the problem is that 3/4 has a lower energy, and we're trying to make a hit. So to convert this sample into 4/4, also known as common time, which is the most common time signature, we're going to choose some rhythmically ambiguous chops, like this, and we're going to be speeding them up. Finally, it's important to recognize that we are using a male vocal sample. And you know who else is a male vocal? Drake and J. Cole. So it can be problematic to have a male vocal layered on top of another male vocal because they occupy the same frequency range. This can result in a muddy mix, and it can be hard to distinguish exactly what the artist is saying. So what we're going to do is going to drop this sample down by 3 semitones. Also, when you drop the pitch, it's going to make the sound deeper and richer and reduce the sibilance, also known as de-essing. So it's that sound, that's sibilance. For effects, we're going to be adding some chorus, and adding chorus is going to make the sample more dreamlike and immersive. So it's going to be filling up the space with more detuned layers. Adding a high-pass filter using Fruity Parametric EQ2. This can actually enhance the sample because the heart and soul from soul samples really comes from the mid-range. And so adding a high-pass filter can preserve and even highlight these important frequencies. It also creates much needed room in the low end for new low-end instruments to come in, such as 808s and trap drums. Then we have some more chops coming in from this soul sample. Once again, we're going to be speeding them up and dropping them down by 3 semitones. So with effects, let's dive into the drums, starting off with the rack kick. And what's interesting here is we're actually going to be playing this sample up at D. So increase the pitch of this by 2 semitones. And you can actually see this was done in the original song. So here's the waveform of the original. If we bring in the rack kick, as you can see, if we line it up to the project, it comes out of time with the sample, like right at the end. Versus if we export this kick pattern where it's playing up by 2 semitones, as you can see, if we line it up, it matches perfectly with the original waveform. So that's the identical kick. Next up, we have the 808. And interestingly, we actually have 2 808 samples that alternate throughout the first beat. The first 808 coming in is the non-stop 808, which, as the name suggests, is the exact 808 that was used in Drake's Non-Stop. When I first remade this song, I thought the 808 was sidechained to the kick, but upon closer inspection, I noticed something really strange. Whenever I remake songs, I look to see if the 808 was sidechained to the kick, which means that whenever the kick and the 808 play together, the 808 ducks down in volume to give room to the kick. And this is because the 808 and the kick are both very heavy low-end instruments, so there can be some clashing when they play together. Some producers, however, deliberately decide not to add a sidechain to the 808 because they love the raw, powerful, even sometimes distorted energy that comes from the unbridled combination of the 808 and the kick sample. It's the raw energy. They love it. But this is where it gets weird. In this song in particular, not only does the 808 drop out whenever the kick plays, it drops out regardless of what the kick is doing. This is super clear during J. Cole's verse, in this part where the instrumental cuts out and the 808 is still doing it. The 808 was ducking down in volume for sounds that weren't even there. So in this case, a basic sidechain just isn't going to cut it. So we're going to have to get creative. Let's open up the sample, go to the envelope settings, and we're going to make this envelope, we're actually going to bring the delay, the pre-delay, up to 12% and bring the attack down to around 2%. We want it just a slight fade. 0% on the hold, sure, and then 100% on the sustain. You can either max out the hold or the sustain, or both. Just one of them has to be at 100%, and that's going to be the envelope we're using. So now, when I play the 808 sample, there's going to be a rack kick sized space in between when the 808 starts playing and when you can actually start hearing it. So it's like, yeah, there's a little gap there. So now it's going to sound like this. And with the kick, this is where it gets absolutely fascinating and really technical, so I'll just go through this really quickly, but I think you'll find this really interesting if you're into music production. We're going to be adding some distortion to the 808, specifically dual triode distortion. But before we're doing that, we're actually going to be going into the 808 sample and reversing the polarity. You might be going, Aiden, reverse the polarity? Let me explain what we're doing. Normally, when you reverse the polarity of a sample, it has basically no effect on how the sample sounds in the mix. Because, and I actually have a diagram. This is it's actually a prop. This is my prop of the rack kick. So this is the rack kick. This is when you reverse the polarity. As you can see, it's still the rack kick, but all we're doing is we're flipping it like that. That's how it's playing over a speaker. That's what reversing the polarity is doing. That was just the most pointless. I actually went out and bought a wire for this video. That's the most pointless purchase. I've made more pointless purchases than that. So normally when you reverse the polarity of a sample, it has basically zero effect on how the sample plays in the mix. But some effects, like distortion, can be sensitive to the polarity of the sample, particularly if the sample has an asymmetric polarity, meaning that the peaks and the troughs of the waveform are not mirrored. And as you can see in the non-stop 808, the polarity is not symmetrical. Distortion interacts with the asymmetrical parts of waveforms in unique ways, which can lead to a completely different set of harmonics being emphasized by the distortion. You can actually hear this for yourself. As you can see, if we export the pattern into the playlist, get ready for this. The 808 matches perfectly with the original song at all points in this waveform. Look at that. The 808 is right there. Disappears because it's the exact same. Outstanding. If you're a beatmaker, you might never have to worry about polarity. Mixing engineers, however, require an in-depth understanding of polarity reversal to avoid phase cancellation, especially when working with low-end instruments. I say this because there are many producers out there who claim to know how to mix and master, and will even try and sell their services to other producers. But real skill lies in mastering the highly technical details behind creating a pro-level mix. So be super careful who you're buying your mixing and mastering from. They might have absolutely no idea what they're doing. I normally don't get political in these things, but that's really important information. So the non-stop 808 plays for the chorus, then we're switching to the heavier, punchier spins 808 for the verses. Switching 808s here helped to separate the verse from the chorus. It's a nice little touch to keep the listener engaged. There was also no sidechain added to the spins 808, separating these two sections even more. We have the identical snare coming in, which is the BWB Wave 3 Snare 35. Interestingly, we're bringing up the pitch of this sample by 50 cents as well, which you can see by comparing the EQ of the original song to the sample. So this is the original song. Adding in the hi-hat, right-click on the sample in the channel rack and go fill each 2 steps. Then we're adding a couple more notes in to make some rolls. And we're going to be alternating between this half of the hi-hat pattern, which has these hi-hat rolls, and the first half, which we're adding in some open hi-hat samples. This is actually a really clever way of adding development to this arrangement. So we have not only this 808 change, but we also have this hi-hat change. So listen to this. Like, you can feel that something's happening, like the beat is like building up energy. You can even see that the 808 gets louder in the mix by looking at the waveforms of the original song. Then there are parts where the drums come out and we have a new instrument coming in. This string preset from Omnisphere. It's an absolute classic if you're an Omnisphere producer. It's the Hollywood string, studio string section. It just plays this high note. How does he do it? Then transitioning into the second beat, what probably many of you are here for, we have some more identical samples coming in really quick, really interesting. You should pay attention. We're using this bass preset from Nexus called the Prids Sidechain Bass. Ever since Metro Boomin said that he uses this preset, it has basically become a staple in hip-hop beats. And for good reason. It's this dark, rumbling bass, and it's velocity sensitive. So you can decide just how aggressive you want the sample to play, which makes it very versatile. But it has one minor drawback. This preset plays in stereo, meaning that it can cause phasing issues in the sub-frequencies if they are not converted to mono. And for whatever reason, the sub-frequencies in the original song were in stereo. So I immediately went to this preset as the culprit, and I'm not sure exactly why the sub wasn't converted to mono in the original song. Just look out for that when you're working with this preset. So we're going to add an imager and just bring these sub-frequencies down to mono. You can just do this by merging the stereo separation, but I like this way more because the entire preset can stay in stereo while the sub frequencies are converted to mono. This plays along with the Hollywood Strings preset again from Omnisphere. Then final preset for beat number 1 is an absolute hood classic. It is the In Memoriam 1 preset, and we're going to be strumming these chords as well. A major down to C sharp minor inverted, first inverted. That's it for beat number 1. Next up we have beat number 2. Obviously. First person shooter undergoes a beat switch at 2 minutes 21, moving to a much faster, darker beat to close out the song. And this technique has become common practice for Drake, almost guaranteeing the song's mainstream success. This type of beat switch has now happened on 4 separate occasions. The first time that Drake hopped on a beat like this was back in 2018 on the notorious second beat switch of Travis Scott's Sicko Mode. At around 3 minutes into the song, a point where, mind you, most rap and hip hop songs would finish, all of a sudden the beat switched up to a much faster 155 BPM, and this paved the way for Drake's legendary Out Like a Light verse. Sicko Mode would then reach number 1 on Billboard's Hot 100 chart and is to this day the most popular song off of Astroworld. Then, over the next 4 years, Drake would go on to release albums such as Care Package, Dark Lane demo tapes, Certified Lover Boy, along with a series of singles. And these projects had many standout tracks, yet none of them revisited this climactic beat switch idea that was so successful in Sicko Mode. And I began to lose hope. Was this new idea destined to die with Sicko Mode? I was worried. Then, fast forward to June of 2022, Drake releases his surprise 7th studio album, Honestly Nevermind. And on the very last track of that album, it finally happened again. Jimmy Cooks, featuring 21 Savage, was the first track since Sicko Mode where Drake revisited this climactic beat switch idea. And once again, Jimmy Cooks went on to reach the number 1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 and was once again the most popular song off of Honestly Nevermind. Things started to speed up. Less than 5 months later, Drake and 21 Savage dropped their album Her Loss. And this time they went so far as to add a climactic beat switch to the lead single on that album, Rich Flex. That track went on to reach the number 2 spot on the Billboard Hot 100, and once again, that song was the most popular from Drake's album. Finally, we have the topic of today's video, first-person shooter, which leaned into this idea more than ever before. This time, the tempo change was massive, soaring up from 122 BPM in the first beat to now 164 BPM in the second beat, a more significant jump than we've ever seen from Drake before. And what's mind-blowing here is, once again, this song went on to reach the number 1 spot on Billboard's Hot 100. Absolutely incredible. So why is this method so successful? This is crucial to understand. When a hip-hop beat speeds up towards the end of the song, it transforms it from just another hip-hop track into a more substantial, memorable musical experience. And it's not just the beat switch. What's key here is the increase in energy. Imagine if the 2 beats from First Person Shooter were switched around so that you heard the fast beat first. It wouldn't make musical sense. Think about how bored you'd feel when the track is slowing down halfway through. Ridiculous. People want to be elevated as the song progresses. You see this time and time again throughout music history. It's called accelerando. If you listen to the Zorba, which is a famous piece of traditional Greek music, one of the key components of the dance is how the music speeds up over time, increasing anticipation, excitement. This, in combination with such a prolific artist such as Drake or Travis Scott, ensures the song's mainstream success. And it's worth mentioning that he only does this on occasion. He'll only do this one time in an album. This way, it remains a unique idea that he's only employing to really emphasize certain tracks. If he's doing it on every song, it doesn't matter. With all that in mind, let's jump into the production. How do they actually make these beat switches? The tempo in the second half of First Person Shooter is, as I said, much faster. So let's increase the tempo by right-clicking on it and choosing Create Automation Clip. So we're automating the tempo. It's currently at 122, so we're going to be copying this value and pasting it at the beat switch. Then we're going to go back up to the tempo, bring it up to 164, copy this new tempo and pasting it above this beat switch like so, and as well at the end of the song so it doesn't slowly go back to 122 BPM. So now, as you can see, it jumps up from 122 to 164. Once again, I spoke to one of the original producers of this song, Zach from FNZ, who told me that literally 4 days before the album came out, Tay Keith hit them up for a pack of hard, dark samples for Drake. So they sent him a pack of 15, and lo and behold, one of these samples ended up on this second beat of the song as well. To me, this really highlights the incredible variability of music production timelines. We have 2 beats from the same song, one which was stockpiled and developed over a series of months, and the other one which was express shipped to Drake over a period of days. The second beat starts off with this dark, warped sample from an orchestral piece called Redemption by Snore Tideman and Epic Score. It comes in around the 1 minute mark. Redemption was recorded using a live orchestra, which certainly makes it more difficult to recreate, but we love a challenge. So I'll show you how they modified the sample first, and then we can go through exactly how the sample itself was made. We're taking the sample into the project, and we're going to be chopping out around here. We're dropping it down by 5 semitones. And we're going to be stretching it out so drastically that we're actually creating digital artifacts in the sample, which is going to result in this raw, underground type of mood that Drake has started to lean more into lately. For effects, we're going to be adding some Fruity Flanger for some flanging. Then this is one of the most powerful effects for adding clarity and balance to your samples. It's a free plugin called OTT, so it's a multi-band compressor, and we're going to be very cleanly removing the low end by dropping the low gain down to 0. And this repeats over itself for the rest of the song. But at the midway point through this beat, we're actually going to be dropping this sample down by 1 octave. So let's go Make Unique, and let's drop this down. Pitch range 12, drop it down. And here you'll notice another benefit of multi-band compression, as the sample will retain a consistent and balanced spectral distribution. So to compensate for a reduction in high end, because the sample has been taken down by 1 octave, the mid to high frequencies will increase in volume automatically. And because we've taken the low gain down to 0, any pesky frequencies that wander into the low end will instantly disappear. And that plays for the rest of the song. So that's it for the sample. To recreate this sample, we're adding 3 different orchestral elements: brass, strings, and choir. For the brass, we're using the French horn preset from Mojo 2. For these strings, to emulate the orchestral strings from the original sample, we're going to be using 2 different VSTs. We're using the Session Strings Pro 2 library within Contact. As well as the Adagio Transparent Strings Warm preset within Omnisphere to add some fullness and warmth. Then for the choir preset, we're using the boys choir from Omnisphere. So all together. Once again, let's do the same process. Let's render and replace. We're going to pitch this down by 5 semitones and we're going to stretch this out. So that's going to sound like this. What I want you to take note of here is we're not playing any melodies with these instruments, only chords. And this is useful in making beats with faster tempos because otherwise you're going to overcomplicate the sample if you're adding melodies. Additionally, we have multiple pedal notes, which are notes that play over multiple chords. And the human brain loves a consistent note that plays over multiple chords because it acts like an anchor, a familiar reference point throughout the chord progression, which adds a sense of continuity. That's how you recreate the sample. Now let's move on to the drums. Starting with the identical kick sample, we are once again using the rack kick. And here's the crazy part. Just like the last beat, we're going to be pitching this sample 2 semitones. But this time, we're going to be pitching it down 2 semitones. Super weird. And of course, I'll prove this to you. Let's just record this down at A sharp. And as you can see, if we line it up, it matches perfectly. So that's the second kick, which was the first kick. Then once again for the 808, this song is a reigning endorsement for the Spins 808 because that is the exact sample that was used in the second half of this beat as well. This 808 pattern is a bit of a masterclass in 808 programming. First off, we're adding rolls at the end of each 4-bar segment to increase movement. We're creating space in the pattern where the 808 isn't playing, breaking the monotony of having the 808 just constantly playing in the song. Then we're also doing something much less common, which is reducing the volume of one of the 808 notes, which kind of adds this subtle human-like quality to the rhythm. Pretty minor, you can see it here. It sounds cool in the song. Then for this beat, we are sidechaining the 808 to the kick. Not completely, allowing the 808 to maintain a continuous presence in the mix, but still giving healthy amount of room to the kick. And continuing the masterclass, we have this moment where the 808 switches up, creating this new bounce in the song. Then we're almost there. We have the exact hi-hat sample from the second half of the beat, which is the wave hat 8. And as you can see, we're bringing down the pitch by 25 cents, also known as a quarter of a semitone, also known as an 8th tone. Yes, that is actually a thing. Adding a 2-step loop once again with some rolls. I'll prove to you real quick that we have the identical sample. Here we go. So this is the original song, the remake. Oh, it's beautiful. Even that little frequency right there. I didn't miss a damn thing. Then for the snare sample, we're using a snare from our latest drum kit, Snare 74, which you might be going, oh, is that like the last sample from the sample pack? Like, oh, snare number 74. Look how many snares you got. We actually have 194 samples. Then finally, we have the identical open hat, and we're swapping the stereo. Once again, this is a masterclass in drum programming. This is a very unique pattern with different notes playing at different velocities and really long decays, creating this high-end atmospheric texture. It's going to sound like this. That's it for the remake. This is the final result. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, definitely check out our remake of Search and Rescue by Drake. That remake was heavily slept on, in my opinion. Thanks to everyone who made this video possible. Comment below what song you would like to see next, and I will see you guys next time.